If you're about to buy a Sony camera right now, stop for a second and really listen. Because the next body in Sony's lineup, the rumored Sony A7V, might be the one camera that makes you either incredibly glad you waited or seriously annoyed that you didn't. At the time I'm recording this, Sony has not officially announced the A7V. There is no final spec sheet, no confirmed press release. What you're about to hear is based on Sony's recent cameras, what their competitors are doing, and what actually makes sense for Sony to release next. No fairy tales, no wild fantasy specs, just a realistic look at what this camera is likely to be and whether you should hold your money or pull the trigger on something that's already out. The reason this camera matters so much is simple. The A7 line is Sony's sweet spot. It isn't a crazy expensive flagship like the A9 III. It isn't a super niche camera like the A7S III for low light or the A7RV for huge resolution. The A7 line is the realistic, do-everything workhorse. If you shoot portraits, weddings, travel, content for YouTube, client videos, events, corporate work, family, or all of the above, this is the line that's meant to handle everything you throw at it. The A7 III became a legend because of that balance. The A7 IV pushed things forward with more resolution and better video. That means the A7V doesn't just have to be a bit better. It has to answer Canon's R6 Mark II, keep up with Sony's own A7RV and A9 III, and satisfy creators who now expect mid-range cameras to behave like mini cinema bodies. So what is this A7V actually likely to look like? Let's start with the sensor, because that's the core of the camera. Sony has every reason to stay in that 30 to mid-30 megapixel range. The 33 megapixel sensor in the A7 IV already hit a sweet balance. Big enough for professional work, cropping room, and large prints, but not so huge that your storage and your computer start screaming. Expect something in that neighborhood again, maybe a touch higher resolution, but with cleaner high ISO performance and a bit more dynamic range. The more important change won't just be more megapixels. It will be smarter processing. Sony has been dropping AI-driven chips and better image pipelines into their recent cameras. If that processing trickles into the A7V, you can expect cleaner shadows, more forgiving files when you lift exposure, and color science that moves closer to their newer bodies, with nicer skin tones and more natural roll-off in mixed or ugly lighting. For photographers, that means you can slightly underexpose to protect bright skies or wedding dresses, then pull everything back in Lightroom or Capture One without your image falling apart. For videographers, it means more usable footage in the real situations you actually face in the US. Dim hotel ballrooms, evening wedding receptions, indoor gyms, city streets at night, office buildings with awful fluorescent lights. This is where processing matters more than just a number on a spec sheet. Now let's talk about what a lot of creators care about most: video. The A7 IV was the first time the A7 line really stepped confidently into serious hybrid territory. You got 10-bit recording, S-Cinetone, oversampled 4K, but you also got that annoying crop at 4K 60 and some rolling shutter that could bend lines if you move too fast. If Sony wants the A7V to feel like a modern hybrid camera in 2025 and beyond, a few things are almost non-negotiable. First, 4K 60 without a crop is the obvious expectation. Canon is already doing it in this price bracket. Sony has bodies that can do it. For YouTubers, wedding filmmakers, and solo creators in the US who want to shoot talking heads, B-roll, product shots, travel, and client work on one camera, full-frame 4K 60 is what makes that experience smooth. No mental math about crops. No lens juggling just to keep your framing. Second, for K120. This is where it gets more interesting. Sony will still want to protect higher-end models. So full-frame 4K 120 with no compromises is not guaranteed. But a very realistic scenario is 4K 120 with a small crop, or with some limits on recording time or data rate. Even with limitations, usable 4K 120 would be a huge win for slow-motion B-roll. Wedding details, hair and dress movement, product pans, coffee shop shots for your YouTube channel, sports highlights, and smooth cinematic transitions that make even simple footage feel elevated. What's almost? certain to stick around is 10-bit 4:2:2 internal recording with better, more efficient codecs. That matters when you sit down to edit. You'll be able to push your grade harder, match colors across multiple cameras, and give your videos a more polished, agency look without your footage breaking apart when you add contrast, saturation, or creative LUTs. The other part of the video story is not glamorous, but it's crucial: reliability. On paper, almost every camera looks good. In real life, under hot lights, or in summer heat in places like Texas, Florida, or California, reliability kills or saves your shoot. If the A7V can handle 4K 60 or 4K 120 for realistic, usable lengths without overheating warnings, it becomes a serious tool for wedding shooters, event filmmakers, and long-form YouTube creators who record podcasts, tutorials, or talking heads. That's not something the spec sheet will tell you. It's something that will show up in real-world tests, and it will either make this camera a default recommendation or a frustrating almost. Now, think about autofocus. In the last few years, this is where Sony has really been flexing. The A7V brought an AI-powerful autofocus system that can recognize humans, animals, birds, cars, trains, planes, insects, all with impressive tracking. The A9 III pushed things even further with a global shutter and insane subject tracking at ridiculous frame rates. It would be genuinely surprising if the A7V didn't inherit a lot of that autofocus intelligence. Imagine shooting a wedding, a soccer game, your kid's basketball practice, or a street vlog. Instead of your camera hunting when someone turns away or walks across the frame, it understands their head, their body, their movement, and it just stays locked on. For video creators, that means walking toward the camera, turning around, holding products up to the lens, moving in and out of frame, and trusting the autofocus to stick to your face or your subject instead of pulsing in and out. For photographers, it means more keepers when you shoot wide open at f/1.4 or f/1.8, and fewer shots ruined because your camera grabbed the background or a random object instead of the person you're being paid to capture. This isn't just better autofocus. If Sony brings its latest AF logic down into the A7V, it will feel like a cheat code. You'll spend less mental energy worrying about technical focus and more on timing, expression, and composition, which is what actually makes your work stand out. Now, picture the body itself. Sony isn't going to reinvent the wheel here because they don't need to. The recent A7 series bodies already have a solid, modern design. Expect a comfortable grip you can hold all day at a wedding or on a long shoot, a fully articulating screen that works for vlogging, vertical video, and low-angle shots, and dual card slots that both support fast, modern cards so you're not stuck with one good slot and one backup-only slot. It's also very reasonable to expect an improved EVF with higher resolution and smoother refresh. So what you see while shooting looks more like reality and less like an old phone screen. And of course, IBIS will still be there. Maybe not some dramatic revolution, but an incremental bump and smarter digital stabilization when combined with compatible lenses. That makes handheld talking head shots, B-roll around the house, or quick travel footage easier to keep usable without always reaching for a gimbal. So, should you wait for the A7V, or just buy something like the A7 IV, an A7 III, or even a Canon or Nikon body that already exists? If you're in the US and your camera is part of your income, the answer depends on how badly your current gear is limiting you. If you're missing critical moments because your autofocus can't keep up, or your camera overheats in the middle of wedding speeches, or your 8-bit video always falls apart in editing, waiting around for a rumor is usually a bad business move. You can't invoice clients for the jobs you didn't shoot because you were holding out for the next model. But if you're currently on something like an older APS-C body or a first or second gen full frame, and you're not on a tight deadline to upgrade, then waiting and watching could be smart. When the A7V finally lands, one of two things will happen. Either it's such a strong upgrade that it becomes the obvious choice and you go for it, or it drops the price of the A7 IV and even the A7 III in TH. EU's market, and those become absolute steals. In both cases, simply being patient for a bit can put you in a much better position, whether you buy the new hot thing or intentionally grab the previous generation at a discount. Let's talk money and market for a second. Sony is not going backwards on price. The A7V will probably launch at similar or slightly higher pricing than the A7 IV did. That puts it squarely in the zone for serious hobbyists, wedding shooters, hybrid content creators, YouTubers, and solo filmmakers who want full-frame quality but don't want to jump all the way up into A9 or cinema camera territory. This is the camera aimed at people who shoot a mix, maybe weddings on weekends, brand content, or real estate photos during the week, and YouTube videos at home at night. It's for the person who needs one body that can handle almost everything reasonably well, not 5 bodies that each do one thing perfectly. There's one decision Sony could make with the A7V that would shake up the entire lineup in the used market. It's not some insane megapixel number. It's not even 4K 120 by itself. It's this, giving the A7V truly dependable 4K performance. Full frame 4K 60 with no crop. Usable 4K 120 with manageable limits. Solid 10-bit codecs. And heat management that actually lets you roll and keep rolling in normal real-world conditions. If Sony does that, a lot of people will stop feeling like they need an A7S III just for video. Many creators will simply buy 1 or 2 A7V bodies and build entire businesses and channels around that setup. That would force competitors to respond, push prices down on older models, and give you, as a shooter, more power per dollar than ever before. So where does that leave you right now? If you're leaning towards Sony, the A7V is absolutely worth keeping on your radar. Not because it will be perfect, no camera is, but because it's the logical evolution of a line that has always been about balance. Strong stills, serious video, reliable autofocus, and a price that, while not cheap, is still reachable for working creatives and dedicated enthusiasts in the US. Between now and the day Sony actually announces it, your job is simple. Keep shooting with what you already own. Learn your current camera inside and out. Build your portfolio, your YouTube channel, your client list. Pay attention to the situations where your current gear really struggles. Low light, autofocus, dynamic range, overheating. When the A7V becomes real, don't just stare at the spec sheet. Watch how it performs in the hands of people hammering it in real weddings, real events, real studios, and real outdoor heat. See how the autofocus behaves with actual movement, whether the 4K holds up over long recordings, and whether the files play nicely with the computer you already own. If you want more straight, realistic breakdowns like this, not hype, not fear-mongering, stick around this channel. When Sony finally pulls the curtain back on A7V, I'll walk you through what they got right, what they held back, and whether it's finally the right time for you to upgrade or the perfect moment to grab a previous model for a bargain. Until then, use the camera you have, get brutally honest about what you actually need, and remember, the camera that grows your skills, your channel, and your business is never just the next one on a rumor site. It's the one you know so well that the gear disappears and your story takes over.